When 8-year-old Willow Marchand vanished from Pinecrest Elementary without a trace, her mother Lyra refused to give up hope. For 2 long years, Lyra searched everywhere while police leads went cold, and even her husband lost faith. Then one day, while desperately checking Google Maps images of her old neighborhood, Lyra noticed something strange. A backyard playset, identical to the one Willow had always wanted, in the yard of a man who'd moved in just before her daughter disappeared. Who took Willow that day at school? And if she's still alive, will Lyra's discovery lead her to the truth before it's too late? Watch till the end to find out. Lyra Marchand glanced at her watch again. 3:28 p.m. The dismissal bell had rung 13 minutes ago, and the crowd of children, pouring through Pinecrest Elementary's double doors, had thinned to a trickle. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, scanning the schoolyard for a glimpse of turquoise, Willow's backpack, or the bouncing auburn curls that made her daughter so easy to spot in a crowd. "Mom!" A boy raced past, waving to a woman 2 cars ahead. Not Willow. Lyra checked her phone. No messages from the school. No texts from Reed saying he'd picked up their daughter instead. Just the normal Tuesday afternoon silence, suddenly deafening. "In its wrongness, Miss Delgado," Lyra called, approaching the school secretary who supervised the pickup line. "Have you seen Willow? 3rd grade, Mr. Harding's class?" Ms. Delgado frowned, checking her clipboard. "She wasn't marked absent today. Let me call down to the classroom." They walked together into the cool interior of the school. The hallways smelled of floor cleaner and chalk dust, the familiar scent that clung to Willow's clothes each afternoon. Lyra's heartbeat quickened as they passed the construction paper rainbows decorating the hallway. Willow had pointed hers out just yesterday, proud of the extra glitter she'd added to the edges. "Mr. Harding, it's Gloria Delgado. Is Willow Marchand still with you?" Ms. Delgado spoke into the phone at her desk. Her eyes flicked to Lyra, then away. "I see. Her mother is here for pickup. No, we'll check. Thank you." She hung up. "Mr. Harding says all his students were dismissed on time. Willow wasn't held back for anything." "Maybe she went to the bathroom?" Lyra suggested, her mouth going dry. "We'll check. I'll call Principal Vaughn, too." The next 20 minutes passed in a blur. Principal Vaughn, a tall woman with silver-streaked hair, arrived with the janitor. They searched every bathroom, the library, the cafeteria. Lyra found herself standing in Mr. Harding's empty classroom, staring at Willow's desk in the 2nd row. "This is her seat?" Lyra asked, though she already knew. The small desk held a name tag decorated with butterflies. Willow had been obsessed with painted ladies since their trip to the butterfly garden last spring. "Yes," Mr. Harding said. He was younger than Lyra had expected for a veteran teacher, maybe mid-30s, with worried eyes behind rectangular glasses. She was here all day, participated in morning math, did her reading response after lunch. He gestured to a worksheet in his hand. She finished it. "See?" Willow's handwriting filled the page, neat for an 8-year-old. The sight of it made Lyra's knees weak. She gripped the edge of the tiny desk. "Her lunchbox," Lyra said suddenly. "Is it still here?" Mr. Harding opened a cabinet, revealing a row of lunchboxes forgotten by their owners. Willow's sat on the end, purple, with silver stars containing the apple slices and peanut butter sandwich she hadn't finished. "I need to call my husband," Lyra whispered, clutching the lunchbox to her chest. Principal Vaughn nodded. "We're pulling up the security footage now, and I've asked all staff to begin a full sweep of the building and grounds." In the main office, surrounded by school trophies and student artwork, Lyra called Reed. The phone rang 4 times before he answered. "Hey, what's up?" I'm heading into a meeting. Reed, her voice cracked. Is Willow with you? What? No, you're picking her up today. We talked about it this morning. She's not here. The words felt foreign in her mouth. She's not anywhere in the school. Nobody has seen her since dismissal. The silence on the other end lasted only seconds, but to Lyra, it stretched into an eternity. I'm on my way, Reed said finally. Call the police. By the time Reed arrived, his suit wrinkled and tie askew, the first police officer was already taking statements. A second officer joined them in the principal's office, where they huddled around a computer screen watching security footage. Here she is at 7:58 this morning, the technology coordinator said, pointing to a small figure entering the main doors. Willow, in her favorite yellow sweater and denim skirt, auburn hair pulled into uneven pigtails that Lyra had rushed to, do that morning. And we've checked all exit footage during school hours and dismissal. She never appears. That's impossible, Reed said, leaning closer to the screen. Play it again. They watched the dismissal footage 3 times. Dozens of children burst through the doors at 3:15 p.m., racing toward waiting parents and buses. Willow wasn't among them. What about other exits? Reed demanded. We're checking everything, the officer assured him. The gym doors, emergency exits, those would trigger an alarm, Principal Vaughn interjected. And we'll review footage from nearby businesses as well. A taller officer entered the room, her dark skin contrasting with the crisp blue of her uniform. Detective Camilla Okoye, she introduced herself. I'm with the Missing Persons Unit. The orange word missing hit Lyra like a physical blow. She sank into a chair, still clutching Willow's lunchbox. We're issuing an Amber Alert, Detective Okoye continued. I need recent photos of Willow and a detailed description of what she was wearing. Today, Lyra fumbled with her phone, bringing up a picture taken just 2 days ago. Willow in the backyard, holding up a caterpillar on a leaf, her smile revealing the gap where she'd lost a tooth last week. Yellow sweater, Lyra said, her voice hollow. Denim skirt with embroidered flowers on the pockets. White tights. Blue sneakers with rainbow laces. Pink hairbands in her pigtails. Detective Okoye nodded, typing the description into her tablet. Height? Weight? 49 inches, Reed answered. We measured her on her birthday last month. She weighs 52 pounds. Any distinguishing marks? Birthmarks? Scars? She has a small, heart-shaped birthmark behind her right ear, Lyra said, and a scar on her left knee from falling off her bike last summer. Outside, more police cars had arrived. Lyra watched through the window as officers spread out across the schoolyard, talking to lingering parents and children. A woman with a news camera stood at the edge of the property. Mrs. Marchand, Detective Okoye said gently, is there anyone who might want to take Willow? Any custody disputes? Family conflicts? No, Reed answered firmly. Everyone loves Willow. There's no one who would. My sister and I argued last month, Lyra interrupted, the memory surfacing with sickening clarity. About Willow's medication. Naomi thought we were being too aggressive with her treatment, but she'd never. We'll look into everything, Detective Okoye assured them. No stone left unturned. As darkness fell, Pinecrest Elementary transformed into a command center. Phones rang constantly. Officers hurried through hallways where children had skipped just hours before. Parents of Willow's classmates arrived, faces tight with worry and relief. Relief that it wasn't their child. Guilt at feeling that relief. At 9:42 p.m., Lyra found herself standing alone in the empty third-grade hallway. The school felt wrong, in the darkness, like a theater after the audience has gone home. She traced her finger along the edge of a rainbow painting, wondering if Willow's hands had touched this same spot. Detective Okoye appeared at her side. "Mrs. Marchand, we've organized volunteers to continue the search through the night. Meanwhile, I'd like you and your husband to go home. Willow might try to call or return on her own." "She's 8, Lyra whispered. "She doesn't know our phone number by heart yet. We were going to practice this weekend." The detective placed a steady hand on Lyra's shoulder. "We'll find her." But something in Detective Okoye's eyes told a different story. The story of a woman who had seen too many searches end in heartbreak. And in that moment, as the overhead lights of Pinecrest Elementary flickered and dimmed for the night, Lyra understood with perfect clarity that nothing in her life would ever be the same again. 3 months without Willow. Lyra stared at the calendar hanging in what had once been their kitchen and was now her command center. Red X's marked each day since May 18th, 92 identical slashes that measured the distance between her old life and whatever this new existence was called. She picked up her coffee mug, long cold, and stepped carefully around the maps spread across the floor. Different colored pins marked possible sightings, each one investigated and dismissed, each one leaving a tiny hole in her hope. From the bedroom came the sounds of Reed getting ready for work, the shower running, the closet, doctors sliding open, the familiar rhythm of his morning routine barely changed by catastrophe. It amazed her how he could still function, still put on a suit and drive to the office as if the world hadn't stopped turning. "I made coffee," she called out, though the pot had been brewed hours ago when she'd given up on sleep at 4 a.m. Reed appeared in the doorway, his tie perfectly knotted, his eyes hollow. "Thanks," he said, pouring himself a cup despite the bitter smell that suggested it had been sitting too long. "Any news?" It was the same question every morning. Lyra shook her head. "I updated the website last night, added the age progression photo the police created." She didn't mention that she'd stared at the computer-generated image for hours, trying to reconcile it with her memory of Willow's face, afraid she might someday confuse the two. "Good idea," Reed said, though his tone suggested he'd stopped believing such efforts would make a difference. He glanced at his watch. "I've got a client meeting at 9. Will you be okay?" Lyra nodded automatically. They both knew it was a lie. After Reed left, Lyra refreshed the Find Willow Marchand Facebook page for the 100th time. 26,000 followers now, people who shared posts and sent prayers and suggested leads that inevitably led nowhere. The social media campaign had gone viral in the first weeks after Willow's disappearance. A pretty, white, middle-class child from a good neighborhood made for compelling news. But even viral stories had a life cycle, and Lyra could track the decline in engagement as weeks turned to months. Her phone rang, Detective Okoye's number. "Lyra," the detective began, using her first name now after countless conversations. "Just checking in. Anything new from your end?" "Someone thought they saw Willow at a mall in Cincinnati," Lyra replied. "I sent them the link to submit the tip officially, but I haven't heard if it went anywhere." A soft sigh on the other end. "We followed up. It wasn't her." "Of course it wasn't. It never was." "I'm going back to Pinecrest today," Lyra said. "Mr. Harding mentioned another student who was absent that week. Zachary something. His family moved away right after Willow disappeared, and no one thought to interview him." "Lyra." There was a familiar note of concern in Okoye's voice. "We did interview the Kellerman family. Zachary was out with strep throat, confirmed by medical records. They moved because his father got a job in Seattle." "Did you check if they really moved to Seattle? Did you?" "Yes, they did. I understand you want to follow every lead, but we've been thorough." Lyra closed her eyes. She'd once respected the detective's methodical approach. Now it felt like an obstacle. "The case isn't closed," Okoye continued, her voice gentling. "But I need to be honest with you. Without new evidence, we're stalled. We've interviewed everyone connected to the school multiple times. We've checked every registered sex offender within 100 miles. The FBI has been involved since day one. If there was a trail to follow, we would have found it by now." Unspoken was what Lyra had overheard at the police station last week. Most child abductions that weren't solved in the first 48 hours ended in tragedy. And most children who disappeared without a trace were presumed dead after months without contact. But Willow wasn't most children. Willow was her miracle baby, born after 3 miscarriages. Willow, with her 6-fingered drawings and her love of butterflies and her rare allergies, that meant Lyra had to check every food label twice. "I understand," Lyra said, though she didn't. "Thank you for the update." After hanging up, she moved to Willow's bedroom. She hadn't changed anything. The butterfly bedspread was still rumpled where Willow had hastily pulled it up the morning she disappeared. The stack of library books on the nightstand had required 3 separate sets of renewal fees. The air smelled faintly of the lavender spray Willow insisted kept monsters away. Lyra sat on the edge of the bed and picked up the stuffed tiger that had been Willow's favorite since infancy. Its fur was worn thin in patches, one eye dangling by a thread. She pressed it to her face, inhaling deeply, searching for any trace of her daughter's scent. Nothing. Even that was fading. The doorbell rang, startling her from her ritual. Through the peephole, Lyra saw Detective Okoye standing on her porch, though they'd spoken on the phone just 30 minutes earlier. "I was in the neighborhood," Okoye explained as Lyra opened the door. But her expression, tight around the eyes, mouth set in a grim line, told a different story. "You found something," Lyra said, her heart hammered against her ribs. "Tell me, may I come in?" The detective declined coffee, sitting stiffly on the edge of the couch, a manila folder clutched in her hands. "We've exhausted all leads," she said finally. "The case is going cold, Lyra. We're not giving up, but we're scaling back the active investigation." The words struck like physical blows. Scaling back. Cold case. Giving up. "No," Lyra whispered. "You can't. She's out there. I would know if she wasn't. I'm so sorry." The detective's eyes held genuine pain. "We'll keep the case open. Any new leads will be investigated. But the dedicated task force is being reassigned." "Because you think she's dead?" Lyra's voice rose. "You've decided my daughter is dead. And you're moving on to cases you think you can solve?" "That's not—" "Get out!" Lyra stood, shaking. "Get out of my house. You never tried hard enough. You missed something. Someone took my baby right out of her school, and you let them get away with it." Detective Okoye rose slowly, placing the folder on the coffee table. "These are copies of the case files. Everything we have. I thought you should have them." She paused at the door. "For what it's worth, I don't think you're wrong to keep hoping. Just don't let it consume you entirely." After the detective left, Lyra sank to the floor beside the folder, but couldn't bring herself to open it. Outside, the afternoon faded to evening. The lights from neighboring houses flickered on, families gathering for dinner, children being called in from play. When Reed returned hours later, he found her still sitting there, the folder untouched, Willow's tiger clutched to her chest. "The case is going cold," she told him, her voice raw from crying. Reed nodded, unsurprised. He'd been expecting this, she realized. Maybe he'd even wanted it, a permission of sorts to begin moving forward. Maybe we should talk to someone, he suggested, loosening his tie. Grief counseling might help us. I don't need grief counseling. The words came out sharper than she intended. Willow isn't dead. Reed's face tightened. Lyra, it's been 3 months without a single credible lead. We have to at least consider… No! She stood, hugging the tiger tighter. We don't have to consider anything. She's not dead until they find a body. And I am not going to sit in some therapist's office and talk about closure when my daughter is out there waiting for us to find her. Reed stared at her for a long moment, then turned away. I'll be in the guest room, he said quietly. As his footsteps retreated down the hallway, Lyra looked around at what their home had become. Wall-to-wall evidence of absence, artifacts of a search that was officially losing momentum. The police were moving on. Her husband was pulling away. But somewhere in the emptiness, Lyra made a silent vow. She would find Willow if it was the last thing she ever did. Happy birthday, Willow, Lyra whispered, placing a cupcake with a single candle before the framed school photo. 9 years old today. Somewhere. Outside, a gentle May rain washed the spring pollen from the air. 1 year since Willow vanished. 12 months of searching, pleading, and praying, marked now by this sad little ceremony in Lyra's new apartment. 2 rooms and a kitchenette, 3 blocks from Pinecrest Elementary. The divorce papers sat unsigned on the counter. Reed had delivered them yesterday, his eyes red-rimmed but determined. It's not that I don't love you, he'd said, but I can't watch you destroy yourself anymore. He meant the walls covered in maps and timelines, the nights spent walking the neighborhoods with Willow's photo, the confrontations with strangers who resembled the vague descriptions of suspicious persons reported near the school, the graphic design career she'd abandoned to become a full-time hunter of shadows. Lyra blew out the candle for her absent daughter. What had she wished for? The same thing she'd been wishing every day for a year. Bring her home. After washing the single plate and fork, Lyra pulled on a raincoat and headed out. Her daily walk took her past Pinecrest Elementary, where she studied the faces of children, searching for familiar features in unfamiliar faces. The school had installed new security systems after Willow's disappearance, additional cameras, key card entry points, ID badges for visitors, measures that came too late. Some parents still averted their eyes when they saw her coming, as if tragedy might be contagious. Others offered small smiles of acknowledgement that somehow hurt even more. The pity was unbearable. Mrs. Marchand? Mr. Harding stood beneath an umbrella at the school entrance, startled to see her. He'd aged in the past year, lines etching deeper around his eyes. It's just Ms. now, Lyra corrected softly. Or Lyra is fine. Lyra, he repeated, his voice gentle. Today must be especially difficult. Would you like to come in for coffee? The students are at assembly. She almost declined, but something in his expression, not pity, but a shared grief, made her nod. In his classroom, mugs of vending machine coffee steamed between them. The walls had been repainted, the desks rearranged. No trace remained of Willow's presence here, save for a small butterfly sticker on the corner of his desk, a subtle memorial. I heard about you and Reed, Mr. Harding said. I'm sorry. Lyra shrugged. He wants to move on. I can't. Moving on doesn't mean forgetting, he offered. Sometimes it's the only way to survive. I'm not interested in surviving. The words came out harsher than intended. I need to find her. Mr. Harding nodded, acknowledging her determination without challenging it. Actually, I wanted to give you something. I was cleaning out some old files and found this. He slid a small notebook across the desk. It's Willow's journal from our creative writing sessions. Lyra's hands trembled as she took it. The cover was decorated with butterfly stickers, the pages filled with Willow's careful handwriting and colorful drawings. Each figure had 6 fingers. Willow's artistic signature. Because normal is boring, Mom. I didn't know she kept a journal here, Lyra said, turning the pages slowly. The students wrote for 15 minutes each morning. Most of them forgot their journals half the time. But Willow was always prepared. Lyra stopped at an entry from 2 weeks before the disappearance. My secret friend gave me a special stone. Today. It's blue and shiny, and no one else can see it because it's magic. She says I'm magic too, because of my special blood. She knows about my medicine, even though I never told her. Secret friend? Lyra looked up sharply. Did Willow have an imaginary friend? Mr. Harding frowned. Not that I noticed. She played with Zoe Campbell and Madison Lee most days. This entry, she mentions someone giving her a stone, talking about her special blood. Willow had a rare blood disorder. Did anyone at school discuss that with her? A counselor, maybe? Not to my knowledge. The school nurse had her medication, of course. Lyra flipped through more pages, finding additional mentions of the secret friend, an adult woman based on the descriptions, who spoke to Willow during recess when the teachers weren't watching. A woman who promised to show Willow a place where special children are understood. Why wasn't this in the police file? Lyra's voice rose. This could be the person who took her. Lyra, Mr. Harding said carefully, children often have rich imaginary lives. The police did review all of Willow's schoolwork. But did they see this specific journal? These entries? She stood, clutching the notebook. I need to call Detective Okoye. It's consistent with grooming behavior, Detective Okoye admitted, studying the journal entries in Lyra's apartment later that day. But without more concrete information, a name, a physical description beyond pretty lady, it's difficult to pursue. But you'll reopen the active investigation? Lyra pressed. The detective's hesitation was answer enough. We never closed it. But this doesn't give us much to go on. Children often create elaborate. She wasn't making it up, Lyra snapped. Willow knew about her condition, but she didn't understand all the details. She wouldn't invent someone talking about her special blood. We'll look into it, Okoye promised. I'll have officers re-interview the playground monitors, see if anyone remembers an unauthorized adult approaching children. But, Lyra? She sighed heavily. I need you to prepare yourself for the possibility that this might not lead anywhere. After the detective left, Lyra sat cross-legged on the floor, spreading out the journal entries and photographs of Willow. There had to be a connection she was missing. The secret friend, the special stone, the place for special children. Her phone rang. Reed, I heard you found a journal, he said after she answered. His tone was careful, guarded. Willow was talking to someone at school, an adult. They were discussing her condition. A long pause. Lyra, have you considered that this might have been imaginary? You know how Willow would create elaborate stories. Not like this. Read the entries yourself if you don't believe me. That's not... He stopped, exhaled. Look, I signed the lease on a new place today. I'll need to come by this weekend to get the rest of my things. Fine. Lyra barely heard him, already lost again in Willow's words. And, Lyra? The divorce papers. They need your signature eventually. She closed her eyes. I can't think about that right now. After hanging up, Lyra returned to the apartment's second bedroom, the room she'd set up for Willow's return. The butterfly bedspread from their old house, the stuffed tiger positioned perfectly against the pillows, the bookshelf with new books. For a 9-year-old, presents for milestones missed. Somewhere in the city, Reed was crafting a new life without either of them. A life where their daughter existed only in photographs and painful memories. A life where he could eventually be happy again. Lyra traced her finger over a line in Willow's journal. She says I'm special, and she's been looking for me for a long time. I'm still looking for you, Lyra whispered. And I'll never stop. She placed the journal on Willow's pillow and turned to the stacks of boxes filled with her daughter's possessions, the treasures she couldn't bear to leave behind when the house became too big, too empty. Tomorrow, she would begin sorting through them again, looking for more clues about the secret friend, the woman who knew about Willow's blood, the woman who gave her a blue stone, the woman who might have taken her daughter. And if you have any information about Willow Marchand or any of the children featured tonight, please call the number on your screen. I'm Lyra Marchand, and no family should have to live in this darkness. Thank you. The studio lights dimmed, and Lyra exhaled. 18 months since Willow disappeared, and she'd become something of a reluctant public figure, the mother who refused to give up, who channeled her grief into advocacy for other missing children. That was perfect, said the producer, a woman with kind eyes and a clipboard. The segment will air next Thursday. Are you sure you're okay with us featuring the other cases alongside Willow's? Of course, Lyra said, unclipping the microphone from her blouse. Every missing child deserves attention. What she didn't say, each interview was a chance to put Willow's face on television again. Each missing child fundraiser was an opportunity to distribute more flyers. Each new connection might lead to the one person who had seen something, remembered something, knew something. Outside the television studio, autumn painted the trees in fiery colors. Willow had loved jumping in leaf piles. Had loved or loves? Lyra still struggled with tenses. Past suggested permanence, an outcome she refused to accept. Present felt like magical thinking. Her phone buzzed with a text from her sister, Naomi. Just saw the promo for your interview. Dinner tonight? My place. 7, Lyra hesitated. Their relationship had grown strained over the past year. Naomi thought she was becoming obsessive, sacrificing her health and relationships to a search that seemed increasingly futile. Their last conversation had ended with Naomi suggesting therapy again, and Lyra walking out. Can't tonight. Following up on a lead. She wasn't, but the excuse had become automatic. She drove past her old neighborhoods, slowing as she approached the house she'd shared with Reed. New curtains hung in the windows. A different car sat in the driveway. The maple tree they'd planted when Willow was born had grown taller, its leaves now golden and trembling in the breeze. Reed had sold the house 6 months ago, a final surrender to the idea that they would ever be a family there again. He'd moved to Chicago for a fresh start. His words, not hers. They still spoke occasionally, awkward conversations about practical matters and updates on the case that never really was a case anymore. 2 blocks over, Lyra parked in front of a small brick house with peeling shutters. She'd been watching the property for weeks after noticing a former Pinecrest janitor, Samuel Reeves, living there. He'd left the school just a month after Willow's disappearance and somehow had slipped through the initial investigation. Nothing about him seemed immediately suspicious. Middle-aged, quiet, kept to himself. But Lyra had learned to track the patterns of people's lives, to look for the small inconsistencies that might signal darker truths beneath ordinary surfaces. Reeves. Kept irregular hours. Received few visitors. Walked to the park on Tuesdays and Thursdays, where he sat alone, sometimes watching the playground from a distance. Today, she waited until he left for his shift at a local warehouse before approaching the house. She'd planned to peek through windows, perhaps check for unlocked doors, actions that once would have seemed unthinkable to her, but now felt necessary, justifiable. "Ms. Marchand?" Lyra startled at the voice behind her. A postal worker stood on the sidewalk, recognition dawning on his face. "I thought that was you. I'm sorry to bother you, but I just wanted to say I saw you on Channel 8 last month. My niece goes to Pinecrest now, and they still talk about your daughter. The kids tie yellow ribbons every May." Lyra forced a smile, frustration mingling with the familiar ache. Another day's surveillance ruined. "That's very kind of them." After a brief, awkward conversation, she retreated to her car. As she pulled away, her phone rang. Detective Okoye's number. They spoke less often now, but the detective still checked in periodically. "Lyra, we need to talk," Okoye said without preamble. "Your name came up in a complaint today." "Samuel Reeves?" Lyra guessed. "No, Karen Morris. The school nurse from Pinecrest. She says you've been calling her repeatedly and showed up at her house last week. She knew about Willow's condition. She had access to all the children's medical information. And she retired suddenly right after. After being diagnosed with stage 3 breast cancer," Okoye interrupted. "Which I told you when you first brought her up 3 months ago. She's undergoing chemotherapy, Lyra. She's not your secret friend. I just asked her some questions. You called her 15 times in one day." Lyra gripped the steering wheel tighter. "She's hiding something. I can tell." A heavy sigh came through the speaker. "Look, I understand your frustration, but you can't keep harassing people connected to the school. Morris doesn't want to press charges, but the next person might. And a restraining order won't help your cause." After promising to leave the nurse alone, a promise she had no intention of keeping if new information surfaced, Lyra drove to the public library. The librarians knew her well by now, the woman who spent hours searching newspaper archives and public records, tracking down former school employees and families whose children had attended Pinecrest. Today, she logged into her email to find a notification from one of the missing children forums she frequented. Someone had responded to her post about the secret friend pattern. "Princeton Dad 72. My son mentioned a special friend too before he disappeared in 2018. Someone who understood his gift. He was a math prodigy. I still haven't found him. Would like to compare notes if you're open to it." Lyra's heart raced as she typed a reply, asking for more details. Within minutes, her phone rang. A blocked number. "Is this Lyra?" The voice was deep, slightly raspy. "It's Elliot Barnes, from the forum." They talked for over an hour. Elliot's 5-year-old son, Noah, had vanished from a playground in New Jersey, while Elliot was sitting just 30 feet away, distracted by a work call. Like Willow, Noah had mentioned a special friend in the weeks before, someone who gave him puzzles and talked about a place where smart children were appreciated. "The police investigated," Elliot said, his voice hollow with familiar pain. "But after a while, they started treating me like a suspect. My wife couldn't handle it. We're divorced now." "I know exactly what you mean," Lyra said, feeling a surge of connection. "Everyone expects you to move on eventually, as if that's even possible." "It's not," Elliot agreed, "and we shouldn't have to pretend it is. Listen, I've developed some research techniques over the years, ways to keep investigating when official channels stall. I'd be happy to share them with you." By the time Lyra left the library, night had fallen. She returned to her apartment with a renewed sense of purpose. On her laptop, she opened the email Elliot had sent, detailed instructions for tracking property records, monitoring social media accounts of persons of interest, and a technique she'd never considered, regularly checking updates to satellite imagery and street view photos online. Visual evidence can change over time, Elliot had explained. Something that wasn't visible or didn't seem important in earlier images might stand out later. I review the areas around where Noah disappeared every few months when mapping sites update their imagery. Following his instructions, Lyra opened Google Maps and entered the address for Pinecrest Elementary. She switched to Street View, noting the capture date, April 25th, 2 years ago, 3 weeks before Willow disappeared. She moved the view slowly around the school perimeter, studying cars, pedestrians, details she might have missed in earlier searches. Near the kindergarten playground, she paused. Parked across the street, a white van she'd never noticed before. It wasn't there in earlier Street View captures from the previous winter. Zooming in, she could make out no company logo, no distinguishing features except a small dent in the rear bumper. But its position, just out of range of the school's security cameras, while providing a clear view of the playground, sent a chill through her. She checked other nearby streets, finding the same van parked 2 blocks away in an image from early May, just days before Willow vanished. Same dent, same position that offered visibility while avoiding security cameras. Lyra's hands trembled as she took screenshots and noted the locations. After months of dead ends, was this finally something tangible? Something the police couldn't dismiss as a grieving mother's desperation? For the first time in a long time, she felt the fragile stirring of hope. Not the desperate hope that had sustained her through the darkest days, but something sharper. Something that felt almost like certainty. Somewhere on her laptop screen, captured in pixels from the past, might be the person who took her daughter. Lyra's living room had transformed again. The maps and timelines remained, but now her walls featured a grid of screenshots, street view captures, organized by date and location. Red string connected images where the white van appeared. Yellow highlighted other vehicles that showed up more than once. It's about establishing patterns, she explained to Detective Okoye, who stood in the center of the room, arms crossed, expression guarded. The van appears 12 times in the 3 months before Willow disappeared, always within 4 blocks of the school, always during arrival or dismissal times. Okoye studied the images. No clear shot of the license plate. No, it's always just out of frame or at an angle that obscures it. That could be coincidental. The detective leaned closer to one image. But it could also be deliberate. Lyra felt a surge of validation. After a week of obsessively cataloging every Google Maps image available of the area surrounding Pinecrest Elementary, she'd finally convinced Okoye to look at her findings. There's more. Lyra pointed to a series of images from February, 3 months before Willow vanished. The van appears most often on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Those were the days. Willow had recess outside because of the rotating playground schedule. Okoye's professional detachment slipped, just slightly. You've been thorough. I learned from watching you, Lyra said. Will you run the partial plate I managed to get? Check for registered white vans with the first 3 characters LFC? Detective nodded slowly. I'll see what we can find. But Lyra, I need to manage your expectations. Even if we identify the van, it might lead nowhere. Delivery vehicles, contractors, people visiting the neighborhoods, there are many innocent explanations. I understand, Lyra said, though they both knew she didn't believe any explanation was innocent. After Okoye left, Lyra returned to her laptop. Her system had grown more sophisticated over the past 2 weeks. She'd created a database tracking not just vehicles, but also pedestrians who appeared repeatedly in the images. Most were easily identified as residents or regular school visitors, but a few remained mysterious. Her phone chimed with a text from Elliot. "Any luck with the mapping strategy?" "Yes. Found a suspicious van. Police looking into it." "Great work. Want to talk through next steps?" Since their first conversation, Elliot had become her most consistent supporter. They spoke almost daily, comparing investigative techniques and sharing the unique pain of their circumstances. Unlike others who urged her to find a new normal, Elliot understood her refusal to let go. When her phone rang minutes later, she answered eagerly. "I've been meaning to thank you again. This mapping approach might be the breakthrough I've been looking for." "I'm glad," Elliot said. His voice warmed despite the raspy quality that suggested he was a former smoker. "What did the detective say?" "She's cautiously interested. Running the partial plate for me." "That's progress. Listen, while you're waiting for those results, don't forget to check satellite imagery too. Sometimes you can see things from above that street view misses." Lyra opened the satellite view of Pinecrest and the surrounding neighborhoods. Most captures showed only rooftops and trees, but as she panned through different dates, she noticed something odd. A clearing in the woods behind the school that wasn't there in earlier images. "There's something new behind the school," she told Elliot. "A cleared area that appeared about a month before Willow disappeared." "Construction project?" "No permits were filed. I checked all that months ago." She zoomed in. "It's too small for a building, but large enough for a vehicle. Like some trees were removed to create access." "Worth investigating in person," Elliot suggested. "I've found physical sites often reveal details that images miss." After they hung up, Lyra stared at the satellite image. The clearing was about 50 yards into the woods that bordered the eastern edge of the school property. Close enough for someone to reach the playground unseen, far enough to avoid casual discovery. Her phone rang again. "Detective Okoye, we've got a hit on the partial plate," she said without preamble. "A 2018 Ford Transit van registered to Midwest Plumbing and Heating. They had a contract with the school district for maintenance work during that period." Lyra's excitement deflated. "A plumbing company?" "They were replacing pipes in several schools that spring, including Pinecrest. The work orders match the dates your van appears in the images." "That's too convenient," Lyra insisted. "It could be a cover. We'll interview the employees who drove company vehicles during that period," Okoye assured her. "But this may be a legitimate explanation, Lyra." After the call, Lyra messaged Elliot with the disappointing update. "Don't get discouraged," he responded. "Police think in straight lines. We need to think in circles. Did the company have any employees with records? Any unusual service calls?" His questions restored her sense of purpose. The plumbing company explanation seemed too neat, too convenient. In her experience, answers that tied everything up cleanly were usually wrong. The next morning, Lyra drove to the woods behind Pinecrest. School was in session, the playground empty as she parked on a side street and made her way through the trees, following coordinates she'd marked from the satellite image. The clearing wasn't visible until she was almost upon it, a roughly circular area where smaller trees and undergrowth had been removed. Now, 6 months later, nature was reclaiming the space. New saplings pushed through the leaf litter, but tire tracks were still faintly visible in the harder-packed earth. Something gleamed among the fallen leaves. Lyra knelt and picked up a small blue stone, smooth, polished, with flecks of darker blue throughout. A lapis lazuli. Her heart raced as she remembered the journal entry. My secret friend gave me a special stone today. It's blue and shiny. Clutching. The stone? She took photos of the clearing and the tire tracks before retreating through the woods. Back at her apartment, she immediately called Detective Okoye. I found something, she said urgently. A blue stone, just like the one Willow wrote about in her journal. And there are tire tracks, fresh enough to still be visible. Okoye sounded tired. Where exactly did you find this? In the clearing behind the school. The one that appeared in satellite images right before Willow disappeared. Lyra. The detective's voice softened in a way that made Lyra's stomach clench. We checked that area. It was created by the school's maintenance staff to access a drainage issue. And bluestones are common in landscaping. The school has them in several garden beds. This isn't from landscaping, Lyra insisted. It's lapis, lazuli, semi-precious. Not something you'd use in a school garden. I'll have someone test it, Okoye conceded. But please, stop going to these locations alone. It's not safe, and you could be disturbing potential evidence. While waiting to hear back about the stone, Lyra messaged Elliot again. Their relationship had deepened over the past weeks. He was now the first person she thought to contact with any development. During their darkest moments, they sustained each other with understanding no one else could provide. That evening, as Lyra reviewed the satellite images again, she noticed something she'd missed. Zooming in on her old neighborhoods, where Reed had sold their house, she could see backyards and the structures within them. 3 streets over from their former home was a house with a distinctive feature in its backyard, a playset with a turquoise slide and purple swings. The exact playset Willow had circled in catalogs, begged for on birthdays, the one Lyra and Reed had promised to buy when they could afford it. A chill ran through her as she checked the property records. The home belonged to Marcel Thornton, who had moved to the neighborhoods just 4 months before Willow disappeared. Marcel Thornton's life unfolded before Lyra, like a book with suspiciously blank pages. 42 years old, software developer, worked remotely for a tech company in Seattle. No criminal record, no social media presence. Moved to the area from Portland in January, 4 months before Willow vanished. Lyra sat in her car across from his modest colonial, watching as lights came on inside with the approach of evening. The house appeared well-maintained but impersonal. No decorations, no distinctive touches. The curtains remained drawn at all times, even during daylight hours, and in the backyard, visible only from certain angles through the fence slats, stood the playset with the turquoise slide and purple swings, Willow's dream playground, the one from the catalog she'd circled so persistently that the page had worn thin. It could be coincidence, Elliot had cautioned when she called him with her discovery. That model might have been popular that year. I've already checked, Lyra replied. It's a custom design from a small company. They make fewer than 20 per year, and the color combination was special order. What are the odds? Low enough to warrant investigation, he agreed. But be careful, Lyra. If he is involved, he's dangerous. For 3 days now, she had maintained her surveillance. Thornton's routine was monotonous. He left the house only for necessities, groceries on Tuesday afternoons, a visit to the pharmacy on Thursday. No visitors, no deliveries except for the occasional package. A recluse whose digital work allowed him to remain isolated. Today, she followed him to Green Valley Market, maintaining a careful distance as he filled his cart. She noted his purchases, prepared meals for one, coffee, bread, cereal, cinnamon toast crunch, a child's cereal, vitamins, including a children's multivitamin, and surprisingly, a box of allergy medication. Not the common brands, but a prescription antihistamine that required ID to purchase. The same medication Willow had taken daily for her rare allergy syndrome. Lyra nearly dropped her basket. The coincidence was too precise, too specific. She abandoned her pretense of shopping and hurried to her car, hands shaking as she called Detective Okoye. "He bought Willow's medication," she said as soon as the detective answered. "The exact same prescription antihistamine. It's not common. It's specifically for her condition." "Slow down," Okoye said. "Who bought what medication?" "Marcel Thornton, the man with the playset. I followed him to Green Valley Market, and he bought children's cereal and Willow's exact prescription allergy medication." A pause. "Lyra, are you following this man?" "That's not the point. The medication is sold to thousands of people," Okoye interrupted. "It's prescribed for several conditions, not just your daughter's." "But combined with the playset." "Lyra, listen to me carefully." Okoye's voice sharpened. "We've already investigated Marcel Thornton." The words struck like physical blows. "What do you mean, already?" His name came up in the initial neighborhood's canvass because he was new to the area. He voluntarily allowed officers to search his home 3 days after Willow disappeared. Nothing suspicious was found. But the playset was purchased second-hand from a family moving out of state. We confirmed this, and if he has a prescription medication, it's likely because he or a family member needs it. "He lives alone," Lyra insisted. "His niece visits regularly. That would explain the children's items." A sigh crackled through the phone. "I understand your desperation to find answers, but this man has been cleared. If you continue following him, he could file harassment charges." After the call ended, Lyra remained in her car, watching as Thornton loaded his groceries into his modestly priced sedan. Nothing about him immediately suggested kidnapper. Average height, average build, unremarkable brown hair cut short. The kind of person who blended into backgrounds, who might pass unnoticed in a crowd. Perhaps that was the perfect disguise. She messaged Elliot about the detective's dismissal of her concerns. "Police often miss things," he replied. "Trust your instincts." Lyra continued her surveillance, documenting Thornton's movements. On Friday, she noticed a new pattern. He left his house at precisely 2:15 p.m., returning exactly 45 minutes later. The timing coincided with the end of the school day at Pinecrest. The next Friday, she followed him during this outing. Instead of heading toward the school, he drove to a small medical office and went inside. Through the office window, she could see him speaking with a receptionist, then taking a seat in the waiting room. A dentist appointment. Another dead end. As she turned to leave, she overheard a hygienist calling his name. "Mr. Thornton? Dr. Weber is ready for you." Later that evening, while reviewing her notes, Lyra realized she'd missed something significant. A gap in Thornton's routine. Every Sunday, he disappeared for approximately 5 hours, leaving around noon and returning after dark. Where did he go during these weekly absences? The following Sunday, Lyra was ready. She followed Thornton's sedan as it headed out of town, maintaining a careful distance on the rural highways. After about 40 minutes, he turned onto a gravel road that wound through dense woods. Lyra waited until he was out of sight before following. The road ended at a small cabin set back among the trees, its windows covered with what appeared to be blackout curtains. Thornton's car was parked outside. She watched from a distance as he unloaded several bags from his trunk, groceries, and what looked like a small duffel bag. He entered the cabin, stayed for approximately 10 minutes, then emerged without the bags, locked the door with what appeared to be multiple locks, and drove away. He hadn't stayed. Why bring supplies to a cabin only to leave immediately? After his car disappeared down the gravel road, Lyra approached the structure cautiously. The windows were indeed covered, allowing no view inside. She circled the building, looking for any sign of occupation, fresh footprints besides Thornton's, smoke from the chimney, sounds from within. Nothing. At the back of the cabin, she discovered a small window where the covering had partially come loose. Standing on a fallen log, she could just reach it, peering through a narrow gap into what appeared to be a bedroom. The room was small, but unexpectedly comfortable. A twin bed with colorful bedding, a bookshelf filled with children's books, a desk with coloring supplies. On the wall hung several drawings, crude but distinctive. Lyra's breath caught. The drawings depicted people with 6 fingers on each hand, just like Willow had always drawn. Her heart pounded as she strained to see more details. Was that Willow's handwriting on a sheet of paper taped beside the drawings? She stretched higher, balancing precariously on the log. Then, without warning, the rotted wood gave way beneath her weight. Lyra crashed to the ground with a sharp cry, pain shooting through her ankle as she landed awkwardly. The noise seemed deafening in the quiet woods. As she struggled to stand, a light came on inside the cabin. Someone was in there after all. Pain shot through Lyra's ankle as she dragged herself into the underbrush, leaves crackling beneath her. The cabin door creaked open, spilling yellow light onto the ground. Lyra held her breath, pressing herself against the damp earth beneath. A tangle of mountain laurel. A figure emerged, not Thornton, but a woman, middle-aged, thin, with a nervous demeanor. She stepped onto the small porch, scanning the darkness. "Hello?" the woman called, her voice high and uncertain. "Is someone there?" Lyra remained motionless, heart hammering in her chest. The woman listened for a moment longer, then retreated inside, securing multiple locks with audible clicks. Once certain she wouldn't return, Lyra crawled painfully through the underbrush, putting distance between herself and the cabin before attempting to stand. Her ankle throbbed, barely supporting her weight as she limped back to her car. Inside the safety of her vehicle, hands trembling, she called Detective Okoye. "I found something," she gasped, fighting to control her voice. "A cabin outside town. Thornton visits it weekly, but doesn't stay. There's a woman there, and a child's room with drawings, 6 fingers on the hands, just like Willow always drew. Lyra." Okoye's voice was tight with concern. "Where are you right now?" "About 40 minutes west of town, off Route 16. The cabin is down a gravel road, secluded. You need to get here. I'll send officers to check it out, but I need you to go home, Lyra. Don't return to the property." "I can show them exactly—" "No." Okoye's tone left no room for argument. "Text me the coordinates and go home. This is a police matter now. If you're spotted near that cabin again, you could compromise any potential investigation." Reluctantly, Lyra agreed. She sent the cabin's location, then sat in her car, conflicted. Every instinct screamed to stay, to watch the cabin until police arrived. But her throbbing ankle and Okoye's warning convinced her to leave. As she drove home, her phone rang. "Elliot, what's happened?" he asked immediately, as if sensing her distress. Lyra poured out the story. The cabin, the drawings, the woman, the police response. "You did the right thing calling it in," he said, "and leaving when they told you to. You've done all you can for tonight. What if they don't find anything? What if Thornton or that woman clears everything out before the police arrive?" Then we'll find another way, Elliot assured her. I'll drive out tomorrow to meet you. We can strategize in person. The offer surprised her. Though they'd spoken daily for weeks, Elliot had never suggested meeting face to face. You'd do that? Drive all the way from New Jersey? I'm closer than you think, he said. I've been staying in Columbus for a consulting job, about 3 hours from you. The thought of having an ally physically present, someone who believed her without question, brought unexpected tears to her eyes. That would help so much. At home, Lyra elevated her swollen ankle and waited for news from Okoye. Hours passed, with no call. Finally, near midnight, her phone lit up with the detective's number. We checked the cabin, Okoye said without preamble. Nothing suspicious was found. That's impossible. Lyra sat up straight, wincing as she jostled her ankle. I saw the drawings, the child's bedroom, and a woman was there. The cabin was empty, Lyra. No woman, no child's room, just basic furniture and some hunting equipment. It belongs to Marcel Thornton's brother, who lets him use it occasionally. They cleared it out, Lyra insisted. They must have known someone was watching. Okoye's sigh carried through the phone. There was no evidence the cabin had been recently altered or cleaned. The dust patterns were undisturbed. Sleep evaded Lyra that night. How could the cabin be empty? She hadn't imagined the drawings, the books, the child's bed. And the woman, she had clearly seen her, heard her voice. In the morning, her ankle had swollen to twice its normal size. The urgent care doctor diagnosed a severe sprain, prescribing rest, ice, and an air cast. By afternoon, Lyra was back at her apartment, frustration mounting as she waited for Elliot to arrive. When she shared her suspicions with Reed during their weekly check-in call, his reaction was immediate and alarmed. You broke into someone's property? He demanded. Lyra, this has gone too far. You could have been arrested, or worse, hurt. I didn't break in, she corrected. I looked through a window, and I saw evidence, Reed. Drawings like willows. The police found nothing, he reminded her. And now you're meeting a stranger you know only from the internet? This doesn't sound safe. Elliot understands what I'm going through. His son disappeared, too. Have you verified that? Have you seen any evidence his story is true? The question caught her off guard. Why would he lie? People do, Lyra. Especially to vulnerable women. Reed's voice softened. I'm worried about you. This obsession is consuming you, and now it's putting you in physical danger. It's not an obsession, Lyra snapped. It's our daughter. And if you get yourself hurt or killed, what good will that do her? After they hung up, Lyra stewed in frustration. Reed didn't understand. No one did, except Elliot. She messaged him her address and settled in to wait, scrolling through her photos of Thornton's house and the satellite images of the area around the cabin. Around 4 o'clock, a car pulled up outside. Through the window, Lyra watched a man emerge, tall, with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Not what she'd pictured from Elliot's voice, but she recognized him from his profile photo on the Missing Children forum. She opened the door before he could knock, balancing on her good foot. Thank you for coming. Of course, Elliot said, his familiar raspy voice sounding different in person. He glanced at her air cast. Should you be on your feet? Probably not. She gestured him inside, hobbling back to the couch. The police found nothing at the cabin. They claim it was empty. Elliot frowned, setting down a small duffel bag. That's unexpected. They're wrong, Lyra insisted. I know what I saw. I believe you. He surveyed her apartment, taking in the maps and timeline on the walls. This is impressive work. Very thorough. Not thorough enough, apparently. She handed him her tablet. Here's everything I have on Thornton. His routine, his purchases, the play set in his yard. And look at this. She pulled up a photo. That's him at the hardware store last week. And here's a screenshot from the school's PTA meeting video from last year. There's a man in the background who looks just like him, but with darker hair. Elliot studied the images. The resemblance is there. Thornton supposedly moved here in January. But what if he was already watching the school earlier? What if he changed his appearance? It's possible. He sat beside her on the couch. Tell me more about your plans to investigate him. For the next hour, Lyra detailed her surveillance and research. Elliot listened attentively, asking occasional questions, but mostly letting her talk. His presence was reassuring, solid, calm, focused. When she described the moment at the cabin when she saw the six-fingered drawings, he leaned forward, expression intensifying. Those drawings are significant, he said. The 6 fingers. It's too unique to dismiss. Exactly what I thought. Lyra felt the validation like a physical warmth. I'm going back to that cabin. Elliot's eyebrows rose. With your injury? That seems unwise. Perhaps I should go instead while you rest. You would do that? Of course. He stood, pacing the small living room. I'll go tomorrow. You can direct me from here, monitor police communications. We'll be more effective as a team. As he moved around the room, Lyra noticed something odd about his gait. A slight favoring of his left leg, almost a limp. It triggered a memory. The satellite image of Thornton's backyard. Someone moving near the playset with that same distinctive walk. A chill ran through her. Coincidence, surely. Lots of people had minor limps or injuries. Lyra. Elliot had stopped pacing, watching her. Is something wrong? She forced a smile. Just my ankle. Why don't I show you the satellite images of the cabin area? We should plan your approach carefully. He nodded, seemingly satisfied with her explanation. But as he turned toward her laptop, Lyra's gaze fell on his duffel bag. Protruding slightly from the side pocket was a small blue stone, almost identical to the one she'd found in the clearing behind Pinecrest Elementary. Ice crystallized in Lyra's veins as her mind made connections she'd been too desperate to see. The blue stone, the limp, the convenient appearance in her life just when her investigation had stalled. Elliot Barnes. Marcel Thornton. She forced her breathing to remain steady, her expression neutral. If her suspicions were correct, she was sharing her living room with the man who might have taken her daughter, or at least knew what had happened to her. These satellite images aren't very clear, Elliot said, scrolling through her laptop. Do you have anything more recent? Lyra's mind raced. Her phone was on the coffee table between them. Detective Okoye's number would take just seconds to dial, but Elliot would surely stop her. The front door was 8 feet away, but her injured ankle made a quick escape impossible. I have better images on my phone, she said, reaching for it, with deliberate casualness. Let me show you. Great. He smiled, the expression not quite reaching his eyes. Lyra unlocked her phone, fingers trembling slightly as she navigated to her photos. Her thumb hovered over the messaging app, calculating if she could send an SOS to Okoye without him noticing. A text notification appeared at the top of her screen. From Reed, just checking in. Still worried about you meeting that stranger. Call me when you can. Elliot's gaze flicked to the message. Something in his expression hardened. Your ex-husband seems concerned, he said, voice still pleasant but with a new edge beneath it. Protective, isn't he? Reed worries too much. Lyra forced a laugh, clicking. her Photos app instead of messages. Here are the clearer images of the cabin area. As she handed him the phone, she deliberately tilted the screen toward her, using the moment to press the phone's power button 5 times in rapid succession. The emergency SOS feature she'd set up months ago. The phone made no sound, but she knew it had sent her location and an alert to both Reed and emergency services. Now she just needed to stall. "So, tell me more about your son," she said, keeping her voice steady. "Noah, right? You never showed me his picture." A shadow crossed Elliot's face. "I don't share his photos anymore. Too painful." "I understand. Willow's school picture is the background on my phone." She gestured to her device, now in his hands. "It helps me remember exactly what I'm fighting for." He nodded, looking down at the phone. Then his expression changed, hardening into something cold and calculating. "You're clever, Lyra," he said quietly. The emergency alert. Very discreet. Her stomach plummeted. "I don't know what you're talking about. Please." He set the phone down on the coffee table too, far for her to reach easily. "Let's not insult each other's intelligence. I've been watching you for nearly 2 years. I know how you think." The casual admission froze her in place. "Who are you, really?" "Exactly who I said I am." He leaned back, surprisingly relaxed for someone who'd just been caught. "Elliot Barnes, father of a missing child. And Marcel Thornton?" A small smile. "A necessary identity. People ask fewer questions about a reclusive programmer than a grieving father conducting his own investigation." "Where's Willow?" Lyra's voice broke on her daughter's name. "That's why I'm here," he said, suddenly earnest. "I don't have her, Lyra. I never did, but I know who took her. And I've been trying to find her too." "Why should I believe anything you say?" "Because I understand your pain better than anyone." His expression darkened. "My son Noah really did disappear 5 years ago. Everything I told you about, that was true. The playground in Princeton. The special friend who noticed his mathematical abilities. The police who eventually suspected me. So you've been, what? Stalking my daughter? Creating false identities to move to our neighborhoods?" "Watching her," he corrected. "There's a difference. I recognized the pattern when I saw the news reports about Willow's disappearance. The details matched Noah's case exactly. A child with unusual abilities or conditions, the special friend grooming them for weeks, the clean disappearance from a secure location." "You're saying someone took both our children?" Lyra's mind struggled to process this bizarre explanation. "And instead of going to the police, you created a fake identity and moved near us? The police failed Noah. They would fail Willow too." Bitterness edged his voice. "I've tracked 7 cases across 4 states over the past decade. Children who disappeared without a trace, all with unique talents or medical conditions, all who mentioned special friends before vanishing." Outside, distant sirens wailed. Elliot, if that was even his real name, glanced toward the window but didn't move. "They're coming for you," Lyra said, a small surge of triumph cutting through her fear. "And when they get here, they'll find a distraught mother and her supportive friend from the missing children's support group." He shrugged. "I've done nothing illegal in your presence, Lyra. You invited me here. At worst, I've used an assumed name, but that's not a crime. The cabin belongs to me under my legal name. The woman you saw is someone I hired to maintain the property. The children's items are there because I've never given up hope of finding Noah." His eyes gleamed with unshed tears that seemed shockingly genuine. Those six-fingered drawings on the wall? Noah made them. It was his way of making people special, the same as Willow's. That's what first caught my attention when I read about her case. The sirens grew louder. Minutes away now. If you're telling the truth, why the deception? Why not just come to me directly? Would you have believed a stranger who approached you claiming your daughter's case connected to his son's? Or would you have called the police immediately? He shook his head. I needed you to trust me, to share information only another grieving parent would understand. And the blue stone? Lyra nodded toward his bag. Just like the one Willow's special friend gave her. Just like the one I found in the clearing. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Elliot's face. What blue stone? In your bag. I can see it from here. He reached for the duffel, extracting a smooth blue stone. This? It's a worry stone. I've carried it since Noah disappeared. The front door burst open with a crash. 2 police officers rushed in, weapons drawn. Hands where we can see them, one shouted. Elliot raised his hands calmly, the blue stone still clutched in one palm. Officers, there's been a misunderstanding. On the ground, now. They moved quickly, securing Elliot with practiced efficiency while speaking into their radios. Subject in custody. Residence secure. As they handcuffed him, Elliot looked directly at Lyra, his expression oddly serene. They won't find anything, connecting me to Willow's disappearance, because I didn't take her. But someone did, Lyra. Someone who's still out there with our children. Minutes later, Detective Okoye rushed in, crouching beside Lyra. Are you all right? Did he hurt you? No, I'm fine. Lyra watched as the officers led Elliot out. He claims he didn't take Willow, that he was investigating her disappearance because it matches his son's case. Okoye's expression revealed nothing. We'll sort through his story. Right now, my priority is your safety. After the chaos subsided, after the paramedics checked her ankle, after her statement was taken, after Okoye promised to send an officer to watch her apartment overnight, Lyra sat alone, staring at the blue stone the police had left behind. Deemed insignificant compared to Elliot's phones and laptop they'd confiscated? Had she been completely wrong? Was Elliot's bizarre story possibly true? The thought that she'd spent weeks confiding in, trusting, and developing feelings for someone who might have taken her daughter made her physically ill. Yet his pain when speaking of Noah had seemed so genuine. Her phone rang. Reed, frantic. After receiving the SOS alert, I'm okay, she assured him. The police came quickly. They've arrested him. Thank God. Relief saturated his voice. I'm driving back tonight. I'll be there by morning. You don't need to… Yes, I do. His tone brooked no argument. Whatever he told you, whatever he claimed, we'll figure it out together. After they hung up, Lyra pulled her laptop closer, opening a new search. Noah Barnes, missing Princeton, she typed, half expecting to find nothing, proof of Elliot's deception. Instead, dozens of results appeared. News articles, missing child posters, a foundation established in Noah's name. And there he was, a solemn 5-year-old with intelligent eyes and a serious expression. The real Noah Barnes, who had indeed disappeared from a playground in Princeton 5 years ago while his father, Elliot Barnes, took a business call. The truth, it seemed, was far more complicated than she had imagined. Morning light spilled through Lyra's apartment windows, illuminating the coffee mugs Reed had set on the Aite kitchen counter. He'd arrived at dawn, eyes heavy with concern and the strain of the overnight drive. They found nothing, Detective Okoye announced, standing in Lyra's living room 3 days after Elliot's arrest. The cabin contained exactly what he claimed. mementos of his son, nothing related to Willow. His devices show years of research into missing children cases with similar patterns. So he was telling the truth? Lyra asked, struggling to reconcile this with her certainty that Elliot had been involved. Not entirely. Okoye sat across from Lyra and Reed. His real name is Elliot Barnes. That much is true. His son Noah did disappear 5 years ago in Princeton, matching the story he told you. But Marcel Thornton isn't just an alias he created to investigate discreetly. There's more to it. Reed leaned forward. What do you mean? Before becoming Marcel Thornton, Elliot Barnes worked as a janitor at Pinecrest Elementary under his real name. He was dismissed 6 months before Willow disappeared after a teacher reported him showing unusual interest in certain students. The revelation hit Lyra like a physical blow. He worked at Willow's school? How did that not come up in your investigation when she disappeared? He used a different appearance then. Beard, different hair color, and background checks showed no criminal history. After his dismissal, he changed his appearance, adopted the Marcel Thornton identity, and moved back to the area, specifically choosing a home near yours. So he was stalking Willow, Reed said, his voice tight with anger. It appears so. Okoye's expression was grave. We've found evidence on his computer that he researched Willow extensively before her disappearance. He was particularly interested in her medical condition. Then he did take her. Lyra's voice broke. He's been lying all along. That's the strange part, Okoye said. His alibi for the day of Willow's disappearance is solid. Security footage shows him at a conference in Columbus, 2 hours away. And his research didn't stop after she vanished. If anything, it intensified. He has extensive files on everyone connected to Pinecrest, notes on dozens of potential suspects. Reed shook his head, confused. So he was obsessed with Willow, but didn't abduct her? Then inserted himself into Lyra's life to, what, help find her? Possibly. But his methods were manipulative and illegal. He's admitted to creating the Thornton identity specifically to monitor your family and the investigation. Okoye turned to Lyra. He claims he noticed Willow because of her rare condition. Apparently, his sister had the same disorder and died in childhood. He became fixated on her, believing she needed special protection. A chill ran through Lyra as pieces clicked into place. The woman at the cabin, his sister's former nurse, who he occasionally employs to maintain the property. She confirms he's been obsessed with finding Noah and other missing children with special conditions. I don't understand, Lyra said. If he didn't take Willow, why pretend to be another grieving parent? Why the elaborate deception? Because he was planning to take her, Okoye replied quietly. By his own admission, he'd been watching Willow for months, learning her routines. He was waiting for the right moment when, as he put it, someone beat him to it. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Elliot, a predator interrupted by another predator. There's more, Okoye continued. Once Willow disappeared, Barnes became determined to find her, but not for the reasons you might think. His journals suggest he still believed he could save her from whatever fate had befallen his son. He began tracking other potential suspects, which led him to notice something significant on the day Willow vanished. What did he see? Lyra's heart raced. He claims he observed Willow leaving school with a woman in medical scrubs. According to his notes, the woman showed Willow something on her phone that made her go willingly. He didn't intervene because he assumed it was related to Willow's medical needs. A woman in scrubs, Reed repeated. Have you identified her? We're working on it. Barnes's description is frustratingly vague. Mid-30s, brown hair in a ponytail, average height. He was observing from a distance and was more focused on Willow. Why didn't he come forward with this information when she disappeared? Lyra demanded. He couldn't without revealing he'd been stalking her. And by the time he realized what had happened, the woman and Willow were gone. Okoye sighed. He's a disturbed individual, Lyra. His obsession with his son's disappearance warped into fixation on other children with special needs or abilities. In his mind, he was protecting them by monitoring them and potentially removing them from what he perceived as inadequate care. He's a monster, Reed said flatly. A monster who might have seen who took our daughter, Lyra pointed out, her mind racing ahead. Someone Willow would trust enough to go with willingly. Someone in medical, Scrubs, who knew about her condition. We're reviewing all medical personnel connected to Willow's care, Okoye assured them. School nurses, specialists, anyone who might fit the description. After the detective left, Reed paced the small apartment, barely containing his anger. I can't believe this. A janitor at her school was stalking her, planning to take her, and somehow that never came up in the investigation. People like Elliot know how to avoid detection, Lyra said, her mind still processing the revelations. He created an entirely new identity. He was careful. And then he found you online and manipulated his way into your life. Reed stopped, pacing to look at her directly. You shared everything with him, Lyra. All your theories, your evidence. Because I thought he understood, she whispered. I thought he was like me. He used your pain to get close to you, to monitor the investigation. Reed's voice softened. I was so worried about what he might do to you. At least now we have a new lead, Lyra said, refusing to dwell on how thoroughly she'd been deceived. A woman in scrubs, someone medical. She moved to her investigation wall, studying the names and photos of everyone connected to Willow's care. School nurse Karen, Morris, who she'd already harassed to the point of nearly being charged, Dr. Abrams, Willow's primary physician, the specialists at Children's Hospital who'd consulted on her rare condition, and then a name caught her eye, Dr. Faye Wilson, a pediatric immunologist who had seen Willow twice in the months before her disappearance. A specialist who had, according to Lyra's notes, relocated her practice shortly after Willow vanished. Reed, do you remember Dr. Wilson? The specialist with the new treatment approach? He frowned, thinking. Vaguely. Younger woman? Very passionate about her research? Yes. She transferred Willow to a different medication, remember? Said the standard treatment protocol was insufficient. Lyra pulled up the doctor's information on her laptop. She closed her practice here and relocated 2 months after Willow disappeared. That's not necessarily suspicious. Doctors move practices all the time. But combined with what Elliot saw, a medical professional Willow would trust. Lyra's fingers flew across the keyboard, searching for current information on Dr. Wilson. There's almost nothing about her after she left. No new practice location, no research publications. Reed looked skeptical. You think a respected doctor abducted Willow? For what purpose? I don't know yet. Lyra opened another search window. But Willow's condition is extremely rare. What if Dr. Wilson's interest wasn't just professional? What if she wanted Willow for her research? That's a massive leap, Lyra, is it? She turned the laptop to show him an article about experimental treatments for rare immunological disorders. Dr. Wilson's name appears here, advocating for more aggressive research protocols. She was denied funding for a study that ethics boards deemed too experimental. Reed read the article, his expression shifting from skepticism to concern. This doesn't prove anything. No, but it's worth investigating. Lyra forwarded the information to Detective Okoye, then sat back, mind racing, with possibilities. Her phone chimed with a text message from an unknown number. She opened it, then froze. She's alive. Come alone, or that changes. 1647 Lakewood Drive, Old Northridge Psychiatric Center. What is it? Reed asked. Seeing her expression, Lyra's mouth went dry. It's from Elliot. He's out. That's impossible. They just arrested him 3 days ago. She showed him the message. He knows something about Willow. This is obviously a trap, Reed said firmly. We need to call Okoye immediately. Lyra stared at the address. Northridge Psychiatric Center, an abandoned children's mental health facility that had closed years ago after funding cuts. The perfect, isolated location for a confrontation, or for holding a child without detection. If I tell Okoye, she'll forbid me from going. If I don't go, we might lose our only chance to find out what he knows. Lyra, you can't seriously be considering… What? If Willow is there? Her voice cracked. What if all this time she's been just miles away? Reed gripped her shoulders. Then we tell the police, and they handle it properly. You're not meeting a man who by his own admission was planning to abduct our daughter. Lyra nodded slowly, appearing to agree. But as Reed stepped away to call Okoye, her gaze remained fixed on the address. Despite everything she now knew about Elliot Barnes, one fact remained undeniable. He wanted to find Willow as desperately as she did, and he claimed to know she was alive. The Northridge Psychiatric Center loomed against the afternoon sky, its brick facade crumbling, windows boarded or broken. Lyra parked her car at the edge of the overgrown lot, heart hammering in her chest. She hadn't told Reed where she was going. After he'd called Okoye about Elliot's text, she'd waited until he stepped into the bathroom, then slipped out, leaving. Only a brief note. I have to do this. Call Okoye. Tell her where I am. Now, standing before the abandoned building, doubt gnawed at her. This was reckless, potentially suicidal. Elliot Barnes was a disturbed man who had admitted to planning to abduct her daughter. Yet, something drove her forward. The unshakable instinct that had guided her investigation for 2 years, and those 4 words that made everything else irrelevant. She's alive. Come alone. The main entrance was chained shut, but a side door hung partially open, metal groaning as Lyra pushed it wider. Inside, dust motes swirled in shafts of light from broken windows. Graffiti covered the walls of what had once been a reception area. Elliot? Her voice echoed through empty corridors. No response came. She moved deeper into the building, climbing. A staircase where metal handrails still bore chipped remnants of cheerful yellow paint. A failed attempt to make the psychiatric facility less intimidating for its young patients. On the second floor, a door stood ajar, light spilling from within. Lyra approached cautiously, adrenaline sharpening her senses. She pushed the door open fully. The room had once been a therapy space. Faded murals of woodland creatures danced across the walls, their painted eyes seeming to follow her movements. In the center, Elliot Barnes sat in a metal folding chair, his posture relaxed, almost meditative. You came alone. Good. His voice was calm, as if they were meeting for coffee instead of in an abandoned building after his arrest. You've always been braver than the police gave you credit for. Where's Willow? Lyra demanded, remaining in the doorway. Not here, but I know who has her. Elliot gestured to another folding chair across from him. Please, sit. After our last interaction ended so abruptly, We have much to discuss. How are you even here? You were arrested, released this morning. Insufficient evidence to hold me." His smile was thin. Being a stalker, while disturbing, isn't the same as being a kidnapper. And your detective friend couldn't prove I had any connection to Willow's disappearance beyond an unhealthy interest. Lyra's blood ran cold, but she forced herself to sit. She needed information more than she needed safety. "Tell me what you know about Willow. First, I want you to understand something." Elliot leaned forward, eyes intense. "I never intended to harm Willow. My sister died from the same immunological disorder when we were children. Our parents pursued conventional treatments despite emerging research suggesting alternatives. When I saw Willow at Pinecrest, when I realized she had the same condition, I became fixated. You were going to kidnap her. I was going to save her." His voice took on a fervent quality. "Remove her from a medical system that treats rare conditions with outdated protocols. Give her access to treatments her insurance would never cover." "That wasn't your decision to make," Lyra said, anger rising despite her fear. "No, but someone else made it for me." He sat back. "I've spent 2 years trying to find out who took Willow before I could. Not out of jealousy, but because I recognized the pattern. It's the same as Noah, the same as the others." "What pattern?" "Children with rare conditions or abilities. Children who are special in measurable medical ways. Someone is collecting them, Lyra. Building a cohort for some purpose I haven't yet discovered." The theory was so bizarre that Lyra almost laughed. "You expect me to believe some organization is abducting special children? That sounds like a conspiracy theory." "Not an organization. A person. A doctor named Faye Wilson." Lyra froze. "How do you know that name?" "Because I've been investigating her for 5 years, since before Noah disappeared." Elliot's expression darkened. "Wilson approached Noah's preschool teacher first, asking about his mathematical abilities, suggesting special testing. She visited him during recess 3 times before he vanished. I didn't make the connection until too late." "But you saw Willow leave with someone in scrubs," Lyra said, recalling what Okoye had told her. "You didn't stop them." "I was across the street. By the time I realized what was happening, they were gone." Remorse flickered across his face. "I convinced myself it was a legitimate medical appointment. By the time I learned, there was no record of Willow being signed out that day. The trail was cold. Why didn't you tell the police?" "With my history? My fixation on special children? They would have arrested me immediately." He leaned forward again. "Instead, I tracked Wilson. She's established a compound in Montana under yet another identity. A private research facility where she's been taking children like Willow, like Noah." It aligned too perfectly with Lyra's recent discovery about Wilson. The timing of her departure after Willow's disappearance. The ethical concerns about her research methods. "Why come to me now?" Lyra asked. "Why not go straight to the police with this information?" "Because they wouldn't believe me without your corroboration. And because—" he hesitated. "Because I need to explain myself. What I did, stalking Willow, inserting myself into your life, was wrong. But my goal has always been to find these children. I don't understand what you want from me. Your help. Wilson trusts women more than men. She's created a matriarchal community at her compound. With your connection to Willow, you might be able to access the facility in ways I cannot." Lyra stared at him, incredulous. "You're asking me to help you? After everything you've done?" "I'm asking you to help find Willow," he corrected, And Noah. And the others. The police can't move on Wilson without evidence of wrongdoing. But I've located her compound. I know children are there. With your help, we could document enough to force an investigation. Or I could tell Detective Okoye everything you've just told me? You could. Elliot nodded calmly. But she would need warrants, legal procedures. Weeks or months might pass while Wilson potentially relocates again. Is that a delay you're willing to risk? Before Lyra could respond, a commotion erupted downstairs, the sound of doors banging open, voices calling her name. Reed had clearly read her note and directed the police to the abandoned facility. Elliot stood quickly. They're here sooner than I expected. Consider what I've said, Lyra. If you want to find Willow, meet me tomorrow at noon, the coffee shop on Maple Street. I'll have documentation of Wilson's compound, evidence of other missing children matching the pattern. You're manipulating me again, Lyra said, standing as well. No, I'm offering you the truth, finally. After all my deceptions, I owe you that much. He moved toward a door at the back of the room. Wilson has a God complex, Lyra. She believes she's saving these children from inadequate care, giving them specialized treatments only she can provide. She sees herself as their savior, not their captor. Footsteps pounded up the stairs, voices growing closer. She shows the children something on her phone to make them go willingly. Elliot continued, words tumbling out quickly now. For Noah, it was a mathematical puzzle that fascinated him. For Willow, a butterfly video, Lyra whispered, remembering Willow's obsession. She would have gone with anyone who showed her rare butterflies. Exactly. Elliot's hand was on the doorknob. Now, Wilson researches her targets thoroughly, learns what motivates them. She doesn't take children, Lyra. She convinces them to choose her. Lyra, Detective Okoye's voice echoed down the hallway. Make your choice, Elliot said quietly. Official. Channels that might take too long, or a more direct approach with me. Either way, I've told you the truth. What you do with it is up to you. He slipped through the door just as Okoye burst into the room, weapon drawn. Two uniformed officers followed, quickly pursuing Elliot through the door, while Okoye rushed to Lyra's side. Are you hurt? What was he thinking, luring you here? The detective's eyes swept the room, assessing for threats. He wanted to talk, Lyra said, her mind still processing Elliot's revelations. About Dr. Faye Wilson, the specialist who treated Willow before she disappeared. Wilson? What about her? He claims she's been abducting children with rare conditions, that she has a compound in Montana where she's keeping them for some kind of unauthorized research. Okoye looked skeptical. And you believe him? After all his lies? I don't know. Lyra sank back into the chair, suddenly exhausted. But his story matches things I've already discovered about Wilson. Her ethical violations, her sudden relocation. After Willow disappeared, the officers returned, reporting that Elliot had escaped through a network of maintenance corridors. As they secured the building, Okoye sat beside Lyra. Tell me everything he said, the detective instructed. Every detail. Later, as Lyra sat in Okoye's office with Reed beside her, the detective laid out what they knew. We're taking Barnes's claims seriously enough to investigate Wilson. Her background, her current whereabouts, any property she might own in Montana. How long will that take? Lyra asked. Days, possibly weeks, for a thorough investigation. If we find enough evidence, we'll coordinate with Montana authorities for further action. Weeks, possibly months of legal procedures while Willow, if she was alive, if she was at this compound, remained in the hands of someone who had stolen her from her family, her life. "I understand," Lyra said quietly. But as she and Reed left the station, her mind was already made up. Tomorrow at noon, she would meet Elliot at the coffee shop. She would see his evidence, and then she would decide whether to wait for official channels or take matters into her own hands. Because if there was even a chance that Willow was alive, no risk was too great. The coffee shop on Maple Street hummed with ordinary life. Students, hunched over laptops, mothers with strollers chatting over lattes, retired couples sharing sections of the morning paper. None of them knew that at the corner table, information was being exchanged that might unravel a 2-year-old mystery. "These are satellite images of Wilson's compound," Elliot said, sliding a folder across the table to Lyra. "She calls it Haven Institute on paperwork. Officially, it's a private research facility studying rare immunological disorders." Lyra opened the folder. The compound appeared modest from above. A cluster of buildings surrounded by forest, a perimeter fence barely visible among the trees. Nothing that screamed, "children held captive." And yet, "She's hidden in plain sight," Elliot continued. "Established credentials under the name Dr. Eleanor Hayes. Created just enough legitimate research output to avoid scrutiny. Only someone connecting multiple missing children cases would notice the pattern." "And you have proof children are there?" Lyra asked, studying the images. "This was taken 3 months ago." He indicated a blurry photo showing a group on what appeared to be a nature walk. 6 children with 2 adult supervisors. If you look closely at the tallest child, he handed her a magnifying glass. Through the glass, the pixelated image clarified slightly. The child's hair was darker, longer, but something about the way she stood, one hip cocked slightly, a posture Lyra would recognize anywhere. "It could be Willow," she whispered, her voice catching. "But I can't be certain. I've compiled files on every child I believe Wilson has taken." Elliot pushed a USB drive toward her. Their medical conditions, their disappearances, the evidence, connecting them to Wilson under her various identities. It's all circumstantial, but the pattern is undeniable. Lyra pocketed the drive, still studying the satellite images. "Have you been to the compound?" "As close as possible without trespassing. It's remote, heavily monitored. Wilson values her privacy." His expression darkened. "In my research, I've found she's changed identities at least 4 times in the past decade, always after questions arose about her research ethics. Why children? Why not conduct her research through proper channels? Her applications for human trials were repeatedly denied. Too experimental, too risky." Elliot's voice held a bitter edge. In her mind, the system is preventing medical advances that could save lives. She sees herself as a pioneer, willing to break rules for the greater good. By stealing children from their families? Lyra's anger flared. "That's not pioneering. That's monstrous." "I agree. But understanding her motivation helps predict her actions." He leaned forward. "The children aren't mistreated, Lyra. Based on my observations, they're well cared for, educated, even seem happy. Wilson believes she's rescued them from inadequate medical care." The thought of Willow, happy but separated from her family, believing herself abandoned, was almost worse than imagining her harmed. What had Wilson told these children? What lies had she woven to make them accept their captivity? "I've shared everything with Detective Okoye," Lyra said. "They're investigating Wilson, and by the time they navigate jurisdictional issues and obtain warrants, she may have relocated again." Elliot's gaze was steady. "I'm going to the compound, Lyra, with or without you." I've waited 5 years to find Noah. What exactly are you proposing? Documentation. Concrete evidence of the children's presence that would compel immediate police action. I don't suggest storming the place ourselves. That would be dangerous for everyone involved. Later that day, Lyra sat with Reed in her apartment. The contents of Elliot's folder spread across her coffee table alongside police reports Okoye had shared. He's right about one thing, Reed admitted reluctantly. The official investigation is moving slowly. Wilson's records are scattered across multiple identities and states. Getting cooperation from Montana authorities has been challenging. You sound like you're considering his plan, Lyra said, surprised by Reed's apparent shift. I'm considering all options that might bring Willow home. He rubbed his eyes tiredly. After 2 years of dead ends, I can't dismiss any possibility, no matter how uncomfortable. A knock at the door interrupted them. Detective Okoye entered, looking grimly satisfied. "We've found something," she announced. Records confirming Wilson, under the name Eleanor Hayes, purchased property in rural Montana 3 months after Willow's disappearance, and flight records showing she traveled to 6 different cities in the months before, each trip coinciding with a child's disappearance in that area. Hope surged through Lyra. That's enough for an investigation, isn't it? We're coordinating with the FBI and Montana authorities now. They're planning surveillance of the compound. Okoye hesitated. But I need to manage your expectations. Building a case solid enough for a raid takes time. We need probable cause that children are being held there. The satellite images show unidentified children who could legitimately be research participants with guardian consent. We need more. After Okoye left, Lyra and Reed sat in silence, the weight of bureaucratic reality settling over them. Can't wait months, Reed, Lyra said finally. Not if there's a chance Willow is there right now. He took her hand, his expression resolute. Then we don't wait. We go to Montana. Together. The next morning, as authorities began their measured, methodical building of a case against Dr. Faye Wilson, Lyra and Reed boarded a flight to Montana. In Reed's carry-on was camping equipment, a cover story for being near the compound. In ETG, Lyra's bag was Elliot's detailed map of the facility and surrounding forest. And in her heart was a mother's determination that no fence, no law, no risk would stand between her and her child. Dawn mist clung to the Montana pines as Lyra and Reed hiked along a ridge overlooking what locals called the research place. Their campsite, half a mile away, provided a plausible reason for their presence in this remote area. There, Reed whispered, passing the binoculars to Lyra. Just as Elliot described. Through the powerful lenses, the Haven Institute came into focus. A central building surrounded by smaller structures, all designed to blend with the natural environment. Solar panels gleamed on rooftops. A playground stood empty in the morning light, equipment clearly designed for various ages. It looks so normal, Lyra said, adjusting the focus. Like a small private school. That's probably the point. For 3 days, they'd observed the compound from different vantage points, documenting activity with a long-range camera. Children did indeed live there. They'd counted 6 distinct individuals during outdoor activities, always supervised, always within the perimeter, but appearing healthy and well cared for. And on the second day, they'd seen her. Unmistakably Willow, taller now, her auburn hair longer but still curly, playing some kind of science game with the other children. The sight had brought Lyra to her knees, sobbing silently into her hands, while Reed documented everything with shaking fingers on the camera. We have enough evidence, Reed said now, checking his phone for signal. Still none. We need to get back to town. Contact Okoye with these photos. We can't leave now, Lyra replied, eyes never leaving the compound. Not when we're so close. Lyra, we've confirmed she's alive. She appears healthy. The best thing we can do is trigger an official raid with proper authorities who can safely remove all the children. He was right, logically. But logic had little power against a mother who had finally found her missing child after 2 years of searching. One more day, she pleaded. I need to see her up close, Reed. I need to know for certain she's okay. Before he could argue further, movement caught their attention. The compound's main gate was opening. A group was emerging. Dr. Wilson with all 6 children, heading toward a trail that led into the forest. They're coming this way, Reed whispered urgently. We need to move. But Lyra remained frozen, watching as the group began hiking up the trail that would eventually pass near their observation point. This was no coincidence. Every morning, the children had nature lessons in different areas of the surrounding forest. Today, their path would bring them within 50 yards of where Lyra and Reed hid. Please, Lyra whispered, though whether to Reed or the universe, she wasn't sure. Just let me see her. Reed's expression softened. We stay hidden. No contact. Just confirmation. Then we go to the authorities. They retreated into denser undergrowth, positioning themselves where they could observe without being seen. 20 minutes later, voices drifted toward them. Children chattering excitedly about identifying native plants. A woman's calm instructions cutting through the chatter. Willow, what's the difference between these 2 conifers? The name sent electricity through Lyra's body. And then came the voice she'd heard only in dreams for 2 years. The Douglas fir has softer needles that are attached individually to the branch. The spruce has stiffer needles that feel square when you roll them between your fingers. Excellent observation, replied the woman. Dr. Wilson, Lyra presumed. Average height, brown hair in a practical ponytail. Nothing remarkable about her appearance except the intense focus she directed at the children. The group paused in a small clearing just below Lyra and Reed's position. Through gaps in the foliage, Lyra could see Willow clearly now. Her daughter looked healthy, animated as she examined a pine cone, those familiar 6-fingered drawings clipped to her notebook. The sight was at once joyous and devastating. Willow was alive, thriving even, but in a life constructed on lies. What happened next occurred with terrifying speed. A branch snapped beneath Reed's foot. The sound, amplified in the quiet forest, caused Dr. Wilson's head to whip toward their location. Inside perimeter breached, she said sharply, pressing something on her watch. Children, emergency protocol. The children formed a tight group, clearly rehearsed for this situation. Wilson positioned herself between them and the perceived threat. Reed grabbed Lyra's hand. We need to go. Now. But it was too late. As they turned to retreat, they found Elliot Barnes blocking their path, his expression grim. I told you to wait for my signal, he hissed. You've triggered their security protocols. Below, Wilson was hurrying the children back toward the compound. Willow glanced up the hill, her gaze sweeping over the very spot where her parents hid. For one breathless moment, Lyra thought their eyes met. But then Willow turned away, following Wilson without hesitation. She's getting away with Willow again, Lyra said, moving to pursue them. Elliot blocked her. No, the compound will lock down completely. Our only chance is to fall back and wait for the authorities. You contacted the police? Reed asked, surprised. As soon as I confirmed Noah was here. Elliot's voice cracked slightly. The FBI is already on their way. They needed final confirmation of the children's presence, which your photos have provided. Within hours, the quiet forest became the stage for a coordinated law enforcement operation. FBI agents surrounded the compound, while Lyra, Reed, and Elliot waited at a command post, watching tactical teams prepare for entry. "She won't harm the children," Elliot assured them. "They're too valuable to her research, but she may try to flee with them." The raid itself was anticlimactic. Dr. Wilson surrendered without resistance when she realized the compound was completely surrounded. The 6 children were found in an underground shelter, frightened but unharmed. When Willow emerged, escorted by a female agent, Lyra stepped forward, her entire body trembling. Her daughter, 2 years older, inches taller but unmistakably her Willow, looked at her with confusion, then recognition, then something like fear. "Mom?" The word was tentative, uncertain. "Yes, sweetie, it's me." Lyra fought to keep her voice steady. "And Dad is here too." Willow didn't rush into her arms as Lyra had imagined in countless reunification fantasies. Instead, she looked back toward the compound, where Dr. Wilson was being led to a vehicle in handcuffs. Dr. Eleanor said, "You didn't want me anymore," Willow said, her voice small. "Because of my condition. She said you couldn't handle a special child." The cruelty of the lie stole Lyra's breath. "No, Willow. We never stopped looking for you. Not for one single day." As the family began the long journey of healing, details emerged about Wilson's operation. She had indeed been conducting unauthorized medical research on children with rare conditions, convinced her treatments would revolutionize care if only bureaucratic obstacles were removed. She had selected children carefully, researching their families for vulnerabilities, then creating elaborate schemes to separate them from parents she deemed medically negligent. The children would need extensive therapy to undo the psychological manipulation. Willow initially pulled away from hugs, questioned her parents' motives, repeated Wilson's indoctrination about her abandonment. But slowly, proof of their unwavering search began to penetrate the walls Wilson had built. 3 weeks after the Iquates' raid back in their hometown, Lyra sat in Willow's newly decorated bedroom, watching her daughter sleep. The road ahead would be long, but tonight marked progress. The first night Willow had fallen asleep, holding her old stuffed tiger. Lyra opened her laptop to close the many search windows that had dominated her screens for 2 years. As she did, Google Maps opened to the satellite view of their old neighborhoods, the image that had started her down the path to finding Willow. She zoomed in on Thornton's, Elliot's, house, noticing again the distinctive playset that had caught her attention months ago. But this time, with the resolution maximized, she noticed something else. In the pixelated image, barely visible in a back window of the house, was what appeared to be a child's drawing taped to the glass. Not proof of anything sinister. It could indeed have been his niece's artwork, as claimed. But Lyra recognized the style immediately. 6 fingers on each hand, just like Willow always drew. Just like Noah had drawn too, as they'd later learned. Perhaps Elliot had been collecting these drawings, studying the connections between the children Wilson targeted. Perhaps they had been his breadcrumbs, leading him toward his son. Or perhaps they were something else entirely. A father's desperate attempt to keep his missing child present in his daily life. Lyra closed the laptop and moved to Willow's bedside, gently brushing a curl from her daughter's forehead. On the nightstand lay 2 journals, the old one containing entries about the secret friend, now understood to be Dr. Wilson, and a new one, its pages blank, waiting for happier memories. The world is full of traces, Lyra thought, remembering the journey that had led her here. The pixels on a map, the drawings with 6 fingers, the blue stones. the patterns only a mother's desperate love could connect. Some visible only to those who never stop looking. And Lyra had never stopped looking, not for a single day. Thanks for watching till the end. Where are you listening from? Let us know in the comments below. If this story of a mother's unwavering determination touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us create more emotional stories that showcase the power of love and perseverance. Spread kindness by sharing with someone who appreciates compelling family mysteries. And don't miss our next thrilling story. It's appearing on your screen right now. Just click to continue your journey with us.